tell us about your background and how you became interested in entrepreneurship and investing.
Hello, everyone. Thanks a lot, Naimo. Always glad to be here with you at your several events. Well, listen, where should I start? I've been passionate about entrepreneurship and innovation since I'm really young. I've been working on entrepreneurial projects even before I was 18 years old, doing some contests, etc. I've worked a lot in innovation for large corporations, ventures builders, etc. Then launched another ventures. Then studied my master's and during an exchange in California, I had the chance to visit Plug and Play. And at that time, I was doing an innovation contest for LVMH, the big luxury brands group that you heard of course. And at this precise time as well, Plug and Play was opening in Paris, a brand and retail program with most of the competitors of LVMH. But I thought, by connecting with the Paris team of Plug and Play, they could become my mentor to achieve great results, which actually worked really well. And 6 months after, I decided to apply. And why I decided to apply to Plug and Play instead of other venture capital firms is because on one side, I was really interested by the investment. So I wanted to learn more and professionalize my investment activities. But on the other side, I really like the approach of Plug and Play to be more than a VC, to be the global and leading open innovation platform as a service globally.
Very interesting, Thomas. And while you are on the topic of Plug and Play, we have been on their site recently, and you guys are doing a lot of awesome stuff. So could you kind of explain a little bit about what's your core proposition at Plug and Play for entrepreneurs and ecosystem?
Really good question. Indeed, we are doing a lot of things. So we've been ecosystem builders since the 90s, right? So Plug and Play is the family and a family office, right? We are managed by one person called Saïd Hamidi, who is the co-founder and CEO, along with his brother back then. And in the 90s, he had a beautiful building in front of Stanford University. And when he saw a lot of different new type of entrepreneurs coding, innovative solutions on their laptop in their garage, he thought this was not a good work environment. And he decided to turn this building into the first co-working place or startup campus globally. And he was lucky enough, this is why he called it the Lucky Building, to host as first tenant Sergey and Larry, who co-founded Google, Mr. Zappacosta with Logitech, then Dropbox, Danger, Lending Club, etc. And as you can imagine, he started investing in these startups. And roughly 10 years after, when he got, big check as first return on investments, he decided to grow his vision and professionalize also his investment activities. So he bought a bigger building, which is still our HQ. He also registered the company Plug and Play. And then he decided to continue investing, but in more and more startups and supporting the ecosystem overall. And roughly 5 years after, I decided to create some open innovation services after a bunch of large corporations knocking at his door, asking, if he knew some companies that could solve this and these pain points because they were keen to externalize their innovation capabilities, etc. So all in all, Plug and Play, we are doing a lot of things. We are really at the forefront of innovation in the middle of the value chain. So on one side, we invest in over 250 entrepreneurs, startups per annum. So, we have different vehicles, but the family office is mostly focusing on pre-seed to pre-series A. And then we have other funds with external LPs that are generalistic or thematics to invest series A, B, C. So far, we have 35 unicorns and we backed over 1,500 startups globally. On the other side of the thing, as you can imagine, and as I mentioned before, we are supporting 600 plus partners. All of these partners, they are mostly large corporations, but not only. They can be governmental entities, NGOs, consortiums, etc. And what we do for them is that we supercharge their innovation capabilities through a bunch of innovation services. And generally is by supporting startups to work with our partners. So for governments, generally our mandate is to boost the local ecosystem, while when we work with large corporations, our mandate is mostly how you can find the best startups that can solve X, Y, Z pain points to then try out their technologies during the POC phase until the industrialization. And of course, over time, we developed other innovation services such as ventures building, CVC as a service, entrepreneurship, POC management, etc. So for entrepreneurs, I mean, plug and play, it's really strategic because when we do accelerate them, so our definition of acceleration is through our corporate partnership, right, to do POCs, we do that free of charge and equity, right? So this is in our DNA. We always been free for entrepreneurs and we will always be. On the other side, when we invest in them, so some of the startups we accelerate are receiving funding, but not all of them, as you can imagine. And the startups we are backing, portfolio promises sit into how they can leverage plug and play expertise and network to optimize and save resources in business development, in raising further funds, but also in promoting their companies. And lastly, to scale their business to new markets and new industries.
Awesome. It seems then the main focus right now, as far as I read from your conversation, is you guys are big on corporate innovation and kind of making these connection between the startups, partnerships, the kind of help they need and scaling up. How does that differentiate you with some other entities in the market who are also working with corporate innovations and try to build the startup portfolio for them? So how are you different as Plug and Play?
Our unique value proposition. This is something I would challenge entrepreneurs, with this question. But what is our unique value proposition in corporate innovation practices? Really good question. What people online need to understand is that Plug and Play has been doing that since decades, right? So we've been supporting the innovation ecosystem since a while. And we have a huge ecosystem, right? And the ecosystem is really beneficial for us as well, because we are also learning every day from all of these experts globally. So on one side, the fact that we are an international company that have been operating innovation since decades, this is giving us an unfair advantage in the market. Then the fact that we have 850 employees at Plug and Play, divided, of course, in different roles that all get different responsibilities, is really helping us to put the right structure in place in order to support best these large corporations. Then what I would say as well is the fact that we have been a really entrepreneurial company that has been, implementing the lean startup method as well. So we are always keen to try and co-build to validate our assumptions in the market, some new innovation services. And we do that with our corporate partners. And by co-building with them, because we're already aware of these pain points and we have our experts internally, we can then, of course, scale different innovation services, right? So we don't want to start just because we have an idea. We always co-build with the relevant partners that get a pain points, and we put the right resources at that time. And then, of course, not all of the innovation services that we have been putting in place, they scale at different, pace. Of course, some innovation services are more trending than some others, but overall, this is how we've been operating. So all in all, I think our expertise since decades, the fact that we are an international company with 50 offices globally, and that we have been working not only with the whole ecosystem, but especially with that many partners from different industries along the years, helped us a lot to professionalize and always support best our partners to reach tangible results. So this is our mandate, is how we can supercharge the innovation capabilities of the innovation teams of the partners, but not only the whole organizations, by doing projects that can lead to tangible results.
Awesome. I just want to go slightly deeper into that point, because corporate sector is very complex. So there are organizations which are, for example, working in FMCG sector. There are others working in automotive sector, some other workings in technology, telecom. So there's a lot of layering in terms of the complexity of organization, but also a lot of verticals in which. So how do you, as an organization, fit into that complexity of verticals? If we may want to discuss that.
Really, really interesting question. So Plug and Play is managed both geographically and vertically, right? So we have our vertical experts and we have our geographical experts. All of our corporate partners, they sit in over 25 different verticals. These verticals, they are, of course, really important for us to better organize our organizations and resources internally. So this is something that is still important to mention. But on the other side, the vertical that we have, so you mentioned a few, are clusters of networking, but also domain of expertise of Plug and Play. Because when you deal with such big corporations at a group level, they actually do not sit in one single vertical. In a way that when you work, for instance, with BNP Paribas Group in Paris, and we've been managing the accelerators since over 6 years now, BNP Paribas Group got different entities that are really different. They have Cardiff Insurance, they have BNP Paribas Real Estate, they have Arval, the leasing company, etc. Right? So at the end of the day, because we work with so many partners and we have different verticals with also different teams that are experts in all of these different industries, this is helping us even for a single company to be able to work at a group level, which is really important. But then we have other partners with who we are working with one single department, right? So for instance, we work with big oil and gas companies, exclusively sometimes the automotive sector, right? But this is a really good first touch point for us to deliver and then scale at a group level. But you need to start somewhere, sometime.
In your experience, like when you're working with startups, then does it mean that you pick, how does your startup choice work in case of selecting, like scouting, in terms of scouting or building them? Is the process that an organization approaches you with a challenge and then you go after and kind of scout for that? Or is it that you have a scouting pool from which you kind of search for organization? How does that work? And
Yeah.
after this, we'll come to the Nordics as well. Yeah.
No, really good points. What I think is worth mentioning here is that the criteria of scouting for investment and for the corporate innovation needs are really different, right? But the team is the same because the skills of being able to scout the best-in-class entrepreneurs for investment or for the corporate needs are the same for one individual. So our ventures team at Plug and Play is both the one investing on behalf of Plug and Play and high-class entrepreneurs, but it's also the team, sitting with the innovation team, all of the relevant business units, etc., of large corporations to better understand their needs and criteria to then find the best startups for them. So for the corporate innovation side, how that works, you're totally right. So large corporations are coming to us, sometimes with a ready innovation roadmap, and sometimes the innovation roadmap is not ready. In any case, it's evolutive, right? The market's evolving really fast. So even a defined innovation roadmap can change over time, but we can help them build that because we have a really good view on what's happening in the market. When they have this innovation roadmap, they need to prioritize, right? So some key pain points that they think is more strategic at that specific time. When they've been prioritizing and picking up few different pain points or tech priorities, we then sit with the innovation team, but also the relevant business units that are linked to these specific pain points. And from that point, we want to dig further into it, ask all of our questions. We have, of course, standardized forms, etc. And then also ask them for the criteria, because you can have geographical criteria of scouting, you have maturity criteria of scouting, etc. And from that point, when we have the answers to all of our questions, we can start scouting. And thanks to that, we'll be able to scout only relevant startups. And by putting them together in one list, we then share it and present it to our corporate partners that with their experts internally, so generally the head of the business units that are linked to this project, will then pick out of this list the startups they would like to meet. And we will facilitate the intro, organize the session, and the goal after hearing their pitch, challenging them and asking the right question is to organize follow-up meetings with the best ones and to then start a pilot project that we will then facilitate until the industrialization later on.
Awesome. I think that's a lot of complicated threads to kind of build. And then I think that makes it quite an interesting and quite a unique international positioning that you guys have. How do you overcome geographic complexity? Because sometimes there are certain corporations which are kind of anchored in regions. For example, they are US-based corporations and there are Nordic, there are others. How does the geographic corporate location work? Do you kind of work through an HQ kind of, what's the structure like? Because you are looking after EMEA, and in that you could also discuss a little bit about how does this region look for you when you are scouting for opportunities on the startup side from behalf of corporations. Yeah.
Really good question. And again, it's going to be case by case. Why so? So sometimes it's actually linked to the governance or the different offices that the large corporation get. But sometimes it's linked to where most of the ecosystem linked to that specific industry is. So I will give you a concrete example to illustrate. I think it's going to be easier. As you are sitting in Sweden and you know really well Tetra Pak, we are working with them but in Italy. And why so? It's because their R&D and innovation lab is not in Sweden. It's actually in Italy. So this is why. That's a good example. Another one would be, so you know, in France, for instance, we have the biggest hub outside of the US linked to brand and retail corporate partners, right? So we have over 20 large corporations we are working with in this specific hub. And not all of them are French. But as you know, France is, you know, French and especially Paris is pretty good in brand and retail. So if you are a German retailer, of course, you can have the German team that can service you. But when it comes to networking, events, etc., together with your industry peers, etc., you will come to all of our events in Paris. So this is how we create the links. But of course, you know, we are spread in different offices, but all of the offices of Plug and Play work together on a daily basis for exactly this reason, because we are sharing best practices, network, we optimize our resources, events to maximize the value for our corporate partners.
Awesome. So if I understand it correctly, it's the core innovation unit in a corporate organization, which is your center anchor point for your innovation side. And then it plugs into your system and then you help them plug into the startup world. Okay, let's go from the corporate side and your side to the startup world. So imagine there is a startup now, which kind of has a good match with what you have to offer and what corporate is looking for. How does the journey look for a particular startup team or founder? How does that connect into Plug and Play? What kind of resources they can use? How should they plan their startup journey once they become part of your universe?
So again, I think we need to differentiate between portfolio startups that are part of governmental accelerator programs we manage, and startups that are that we are calling because we may have a business opportunities for them to do a POC. But if we take the third use case, so how does that work is, after scouting the list of startups that are relevant to the needs of our corporate partners, we will, of course, reach out to them, try to ask for updated info, documents, etc., that then we will share with our corporate partners. So it doesn't take that much time for them, and we actually give them a qualified meeting with the best-in-class large corporations with the relevant people attending the meeting, plus a proven pain points, right? So at the end of the day, and we do that free of charge and equity. So it's really good. It's an amazing opportunity that they have in front of them. So we try actually to help them save a lot of time and optimize their resource. From that point, when they will be invited to this session to pitch and to answer the questions of our corporate partners, the startups already shared a bunch of materials with us that we shared with the corporate partners. So the corporate partners get some questions ready, right? The goal is really to be able to challenge them fast to see if there is a fit and they are the best or not startup to select to do a POC. But let's assume the startup has been overperforming and they are the best. We will then, after this first meeting, try to define scope of POC, then organize a follow-up meeting. And after this follow-up meeting, depending on the scope, they will need to, of course, put some resources on the table. So generally, it depends from one industry and one geographical zone to another, but a POC can be from 2 months all the way to 2 years. Yeah, let's be honest, right? In heavy deep tech industries, it can be really, really long. But generally, our goal is really, again, to make sure startups are not losing time, they have qualified meetings, and they can move fast, leveraging the innovation structure we put in place to smooth and facilitate as much as we can the collaboration between the large corporations and the startup that are speaking, different languages, let's be honest. And by easing this collaboration, we can try to maximize the value and be sure that the POC will reach the expected or even more KPIs that were originally on paper. And if the POC is going well, they will then scale it, right? They will industrialize it. And that's, one of our main KPI. So the number of startups scouted, for me, when I sit with large corporations, is important, but not as much as how many POCs they will do. And the number of POCs they will do is really important, but how many of these POCs will scale? This is even more important. This is the golden metric, in my opinion. But of course, sometimes a failure in POC is good because it's part of the learning curve, right? So we want also the companies to embrace the failure culture. And so if the POC did not, reach the expected results, up to the next one. This is part of the innovation journey. But of course, it's better if it gets industrialized. And sometimes startups get even acquired or receive investment from these large corporations. It can happen as well. But that, I would say, is the flow, pre and post deal flow with large corporations.
Okay, that's a lot of interesting insight on the POC. And that brings me to my next question, that to increase the chances that the collaboration that you are trying to build as an organization on the startup side and the corporate side actually works, it actually finds a market fit, is actually able to scale. What are some of the early indicators do you look for in the choice of startups so that they can really do this journey and you can really deliver? Yeah.
Still on the corporate side of things, or more on the investment
on
side?
the startup side, like when you're judging startups, what are the key factors that you look for or which increase chances of a startup to be part of your universe?
But startups that we are reaching out to for investment purposes or more for the corporate innovation side of things? Because again,
I think we can talk about corporate innovation and then we talk about the funding side separately.
Then corporate innovation, again, the criteria may be really, really different because if you have a large corporations telling you, oh, I want to work only with TRL 6+, is not the same as having a large corporation saying, oh, you can try to find me early stage and later stage because I just want to have a clear view on what's happening in the market, because I would like to try both incremental and disruptive innovation, right? But generally, to oversimplify it, what matters the most for us is, of course, the team at the beginning, as you can imagine, and if they are complementary, if they are experts in their respective industries, etc. So this is really key. Then we try to see, if their solution fits the pain points and if the solution is easy to use. and how fast they can deliver, right? And of course, the different use cases plus the current customer references that they have will tell us a lot. And the good thing is we have access generally to that because we work with most of these large corporations. Then you have their technology. Is it proprietary or not? This is really key for us as well. And I would say that overall, if you want to challenge them at any level, that's the most important. So team, pain point solution, and how easy it is to use, then the traction, then the technology component. And what is interesting here is that the startup that we are scouting for large corporations, we don't really need them to be scalable or be in a super big market, or if to see if they can gain easily market share, because we do not necessarily want to invest in them, right? So when we look at startups on the investment side of things, it's totally different, because we tend, for instance, to scout only for mostly a software company, while for the needs of large corporations, sometimes the pain points cannot be solved with software, right? So we will need a hardware solution. So this is what I was telling you before, that so the skills to scout startup as per individuals will be the same to scout for both, but the criteria that we'll be looking at are really different, really, really different. It's not because one startup is the best in class to answer the needs of a large corporation on specific pain points. It's not for this reason that we will chip in something.
Okay.
It's not necessarily correlated, right?
No, it's very interesting, because then on corporate side, it means because the startup scouting that you're doing and then bringing them into the funnel and then the entire journey of the startup, it's very closely linked to the corporate need itself, because that's the client. But when the startup you are picking up for the open market, like in terms of investing in it, then the startups market, TAM, and those things become very important. So really great that you could share insight into that. I have a couple of other questions, and one of these is that in case you go in and invest in startups, and then how does it look like in the constellation of other investors? What is your role? How did this progress over time? So in case of Plug and Play, how does that look for investment side and over long term as well, over the startup journey?
Yeah, no, really good question. And as you know, we do a lot of deals, so we are pretty much generalistic. So Plug and Play Ventures, we do invest now in roughly 250 startups per annum. Again, so family office is focusing from pre-seed, seed, pre-series A, and then the thematics funds and generalistics funds with external LPs, more on the series A, B, C. Plug and Play, our role is to be able to identify at an early stage some high-class entrepreneurs that are solving a big pain points in a big market that get the ability to scale and that we can support, right? When we back them at early stage, our role is not to take board seats. So we are not a lead investor, right? At least with the family office. With the family office, our goal is really to be a strategic investor. So we invest relatively small tickets in a lot of startups, and we support them thanks to, again, our expertise or ecosystem through different portfolio promises that I can share with you after. And the goal is not to just invest in them and let them flow. Our goal is really to be able to help them over the different years and even follow on and double down on the best performing startup over the different years, thanks to our different vehicles. So we tend to always do follow-up, actually, in the best-in-class entrepreneurs we backed. And our role is really how I could really picture the added value of Plug and Play for early-stage entrepreneurs is when you are through this Death Valley, so from pre-seed all the way to pre-series A, where you need to validate all of your assumptions and crack your market, and is generally the hardest time for an entrepreneur. If you can read so many studies, all of the entrepreneurs will tell you that you are doubting every day until the series A, until you can deliver and show that you can scale this business. And how can you leverage Plug and Play during this Death Valley is by, on one side, we can save you a lot of time when it comes to business development efforts because we work with so many large corporations globally. On the other side, we can help you scale to new countries or new industries thanks to our global footprint. We can help you on the communication side of things because we organize 1,000 events per annum. We partner with the best-in-class tech events. We can also, thanks to our social media presence, write some articles, use cases about what you've done with us, working with our partners, etc. And lastly, I would say is to raise further rounds. So because we co-invest with all of these tier one VC funds globally on a daily basis, when you will be raising further rounds, we can easily put you in touch with the best VCs.
Okay, great. Thomas, thank you so much for a very deep insight on that point. How do you see Nordic as a market? So Nordic is, I work with several global ecosystems here, like Startup Grind, Founders Live, and Founded Institute, and of course, Nutty Ventures. At least for us on the startup side, it's very exciting. But as a global player, where is Nordic on your radar? Is it kind of a blip? Is it bigger than a blip? So we'd like to know, how do you see Nordics as a market?
Nordic has been an incredible market since a long time. I mean, we can all agree with that. And I would love to challenge someone that does not agree with what I just said. Plug and Play has been investing in the Nordics since a long time. Actually, one of our latest unicorn is a Swedish startup, Einride. On the corporate innovation side, we've been working with Swedish or even Danish, Finnish, and Norwegian corporations as well since a long time, but without having a local office in Scandinavia. So our first Scandinavia office is a bit over 1 year old, right? The first one was in Denmark. Now we opened in Sweden lately, and we have big ambition to scale this really strategic region. When it comes to the large corporations we've been working with from the Nordics, we are Silicon Valley-based companies, and most of the Scandinavian large corporations, they are really active also at a global level. And most of them, they have innovation labs in the Valley, actually. So we've been, one of our first corporate partners globally was Ericsson, and we've been working with them, but from the Valley, right? Another one is Volvo. I was speaking about Tetra Pak before. Tetra Pak, we've been working with them for a long time in Italy, for instance, right? So now that we have offices in the Nordic, we want to also get closer to these large corporations we are working with since a long time and be able to scale all of our activities near their HQ to have an even bigger impact. It's good to work with the innovation lab. It's even bigger. It's even easier to have a bigger impact when you work with such large corporations near their HQ, because you get closer to, of course, their executive committee. And what we realized over the years is that, of course, our main point of contacts for day-to-day work are generally, the head of innovation, but we are in really close contact with the executive committees as well. And why so is because we want to get closer to the ones that already believe in innovation and show them that they were right to partner with Plug and Play. But we also want to prove to the other ones that innovation is really important and that innovation is, a synonym of growth, right? So this is our mandate. And I guess if I check at a global level, our biggest and more successful, corporate partners were corporations who were working with generally in the Silicon Valley or other locations, and then we open a precise, program or even bigger partnership with them close to their HQ. BNP Paribas was like that. Volvo is a good example, was like that. Daimler was like that, etc.
Awesome. Leveraging on your experience on the corporate side, how has your experience been, or have you tapped into the government sector? Because government itself has its own set of vertical challenges like digitalization, security, infrastructure development, food, and employment. So there are many challenges piling up on government sides, and it's not only in Nordics, it's all over the world. Every government has its own sets of criteria, and I think one of the hardest thing to do in a political machinery is to innovate, because there's a lot of bureaucracy. So have you do you work with governments as well as opposed to corporates, or is that something which is on your radar as an organization?
Definitely. I mean, we've been doing that since inception, sometimes formally, sometimes informally. So what I mean by that is paying or non-paying, basically partners. But what you need to understand is, so we've been working closely with a bunch of governments, government entities, and even ministers, right? So it's not necessarily linked to a GDP or if it's an emerging or developed countries. Actually, there is not much correlation, frankly speaking. I would say the mandate can be different, but sometimes not necessarily, in a way that, for instance, in emerging countries, the governments like partnering with Plug and Play to boost the local ecosystem. But actually, we have exactly the similar thing in regions that would like to boost also the local ecosystem, right? You can have competition in developed countries from one region to another, while the developing countries, generally it's at country level, while in developed countries is more at the regional or municipal level. But yes, we've been doing that, and I have a lot of beautiful use cases to share with you, like in Canada, in China, in Germany, in Italy, in Saudi Arabia, for instance, where we've been partnering with the government since a long time, and it's doing great. I mean, I'm really looking forward to additional partnership like that. I'm losing you.
I know. Yeah, sorry. I know we are at the close or the winding up phase of the interview. And just for those who are catching it on LinkedIn, we had some initial streaming kind of an issue from Zoom to restream and from the platform to. So you kind of caught us midway, and you missed a lot of interesting initial insights we gathered from Thomas. So we have a recording of this, so this will be on for anyone who missed the previous part. But Thomas, if we try to kind of close today's discussion and bring the ball back to the startup side, there's been so we see, or we read and we see it also in our practice when we are working with startups, that funding situation is kind of squeezed right now. Okay, what's your take, or what's your message to startup founders? Should they be worried at this point in time and stop their efforts of building something going forward, or should they pursue their dreams? So what would be, given the market context right now, how should startups or founders approach building new ideas?
Definitely. That's a good point. And I think as a closing remark, cannot be better than that. I will never, ever tell entrepreneurs to stop trying to fulfill their dreams. I think entrepreneurs are challenging the world we are living in, and they are making it better. That's the definition of innovation. So please continue doing what you are doing and partner with the right people. Of course, during economical crisis or geopolitical crisis, it may be, or it may sound even more challenging, but you need to bear in mind that this is actually, in every crisis, you have several great opportunities. And most of the unicorns that you can see right now that are already live are startups that actually started during the toughest time. So bear that in mind, continue innovating, and try to partner with the best-in-class institutions or investors globally that will help you to continue growing. And of course, at your early beginning during the Death Valley, it may sound sometimes really challenging to find your product market fit and reach in the future profitability and scale over time. But this is by striving to achieving your vision and mission that you will be able to do that. What I think is really important when you are in challenging times like that, where it's harder to raise funds, for instance, is that you need to take the lean startup approach even more into consideration, in a way that with the few resources you have, you need to be able to easily and quickly validate all of your market assumptions. So never, ever develop features or product or a solution without co-building it with your potential customers. Because by having this early, metrics, feedback, etc., this will help you over time to actually be able to develop the right and best-in-class solution that answer the market needs. And I would say this is the best advice I can give to any entrepreneurs. And when you raise funds, it's always to reach one milestone in X months, and you need to think about it as a stairway. So think about it like a metaphor of the stairway to heaven, where every step it's a round of funding. And on any round of funding to reach the next one, you need to target one key milestone. And to achieve this milestone, you need to raise this round and to use this fund in XYZ, in X months. And by having this approach of always thinking that way, you will be able to go milestones to milestones and grow over time. And I would say this is the best advice really I can give to entrepreneurs. And again, I know this is challenging time, but I do believe, guys, that this is also the perfect opportunity for you to prove to the world that you can make it.
Awesome, Thomas. Really, really good points. I love the point that you made about like have an iterative dialogue or work closely with customers. Otherwise, you are developing something in vacuum and you don't know if it'll work. And something very practical that you also told us right now, that think on manageable milestone, like what can you deliver, what is the key metric, how long will you need to run for that, and then how much money. Because if you kind of nail down that kind of thinking process for your startup, it's much easier to sit across the table with investors and talk in practical terms. Okay, this is where we are, this is where we are going, this is the time, this is what we will be doing, how we'll be tracking the progress, and this is the money we need. Thomas, thank you so much for taking the time out from your busy schedule for being here with us on the first live Nutty Ventures sessions today. So we're very thankful for to you for being here, and to the entire Plug and Play team for being supportive of ecosystem initiatives like ours.
Of course, Naimel. Thanks a lot for having me. It's always a pleasure.
Thank you.